Hello, beautiful teachers. Welcome to another Vibrant Music Teacher Chat. This is your weekly show on YouTube where we talk about all the latest goings on in the music teaching industry and we dive into one special topic each week. I have a ton of news to catch you up on, and then later in the show we're going to be talking about curriculum checklists. We also have a new thing on the show if you haven't been here in a little while, or if this is your first time, where we give out a prize at the end of every show. So if you want to be in the running to win that prize, you just have to have commented, because I'm going to draw a name at random from the comments, and then I'll spin my handy dandy spinner on my iPad, which is over here, and decide what prize you get. So that's a fun little thing. You do have to be live when I do the drawing, so that happens towards the end of the show, and you just have to have commented to be in the running to win. And the more comments, obviously nice comments that you put in, the more likely you are to win, because you'll show up more in the chat as I scroll through and pick at random. If you have questions throughout today's show, please do ask them, even if they're off topic. You can just start with the word question, and then I'll put in your question, and then I'll catch up on all of those at the end, because I can search then for that word, so it's really handy that way, and I make sure I don't miss anything really important. So if it is important, if you want an answer, make sure to start with the word question, especially if it's not directly relevant to what I'm talking about at that minute. Now, I have, as I said, lots of news to catch you up on. So, I'm going to start with the blog. We have a new blog post that you definitely want to check out. It's for Valentine's Day, so it is time sensitive, which is why I'm bringing it up here on the show. So, it is this idea that Carmen from our editorial team came up with about doing this kind of Valentine's card exchange in a musical way. That's all the hint I'm going to give you. If you go over to the blog, you can see it there. That's at colourfulkeys.ie/blog, or just Google the words Colourful Keys blog and you will find it. And that's the latest post over there. So there's, it's this idea of putting together these cards. It's really cool. I think it could be a really fun project for February. And it's a nice time of year to do a project like this too, because recitals are normally like May or so, or even if you have exams, they're also like May or something, and that's the end of the year. This time of year, there's not a ton going on in many studios, so it can be good to add something a little bit different into the mix. Now, then the next piece of news, we also have a new course, which is very relevant to today, which is called Curriculum Checkpoints. So if, as I'm going through today's topic, you want the already laid out checklist and the fill it in yourself version of the checkpoints, you can find that inside the course, along with videos that talk you through each of the topics and why I've chosen the checkpoints I have and how you can approach it yourself, and a sort of technical video that'll talk you through how to use the PDFs if you're not familiar with that kind of thing. So that is inside the Vibrant Music Teaching membership. If you're not a member, you can become a member at vibrantmusicteaching.com, and you'll get access to that as well as all the other things to do with Vibrant Music Teaching. So that's called, again, Curriculum Checkpoints, and it's in the course library. Then, next week, that's my next piece of news. When we go live next week, our next show, this guy will be live. So what I'm going to do on next show, what I'm planning to do, as long as technology behaves itself, is to actually come to you from a different space, from my teaching room, because this little keyboard is not going to suffice, from my teaching room with my nicer piano, and give you a preview of some of the pieces in this book and give you some ideas about how I'm using it with my students and all that good stuff. And I can answer any questions that need a piano too, if those come up, because I'll be at the piano. Now that's the plan, as I say, if technology complies with me. Obviously, I know how to set it all up. It's just that the internet in that room is not as good as out here, so we'll have to do some testing. That's the hopeful plan for next week. So yeah, it will be live this time next week, because that's February 1st. 1 month of 2023 is almost gone. Side note, but like, whoa. Okay. 2 more bits of announcements. So we have our survey at the moment. Do I have that here? No, I don't think I do. But it is at vibrantmusicteaching.com/survey. So I'll just type that in the chat for those live. vibrantmusicteaching.com/survey. And I would really appreciate you filling that out. I'm going to be honest with you, we don't have enough people yet. And we do have February to complete it, but like it'll come and go before you know it. And you'll be like, I meant to do that. Nicola did mention it, but then I just forgot. And I get it, because I do that with stuff all the time. So if you have time today, can you do it today? If you've already done it, can you send it to someone else? The reason it's so important, this isn't just like a survey about our site and how you find it or something like that. It's not that self-serving. This survey is what we use to put together our industry report. So it's about our music teaching industry. No one else does a report like this. It really looks at the trends and the commonalities between our studios, and that's why it's important that we get as many responses as possible to make it really valuable. So if you can, share it with another teacher friend. That would be wonderful. Again, it's vibrantmusicteaching.com/survey. Awesome, Carrie. Glad to see you filled it out. Okay, so if you haven't done that, please make a date with yourself to do it. I've been told that it's actually quite fun to do because you're thinking about your studio and sort of analysing it yourself as you go through. So then my last announcement is about Accelerate. So Accelerate is our new coaching program. And the way it's going to work is it's like one semester. So it's going to go from February to May. So this is only open until next week. So if you're watching this after that, you've missed out on it, but maybe we'll do another session in the future. It depends on many factors, so I can't promise when that's going to be. So the way the Accelerate program works is you're signing up for the full semester, which is February to May, inclusive, and you get two group coaching calls in a small group with me leading the coaching session every month. And then you also get access to private messaging with me. So this is perfect if you want to make any kind of change in your studio. If you've been thinking that you need to change something in your lessons, but you're just not putting those things into action, or like you want to get into improvisation for the first time, or you want to eliminate makeup lessons, raise your rates, employ other teachers, any kind of change, improve your website. There's many different areas that I can help you with because my experience is pretty broad at this stage, especially through not just my own successful studio, but all the other teachers that I work with. So if you want to check that out, that's at vibrantmusicteaching.com/accelerate. And that is only open until next Tuesday, which is the 31st of January 2023. So it's closing in like 6 days if you're watching this live. And yeah, that's about it. Okay, that's all my news. So I will pop the links in the description after this video is live. If you want to just click through, that'll be easier for you. Once the replay is up, all the links will be there. All right, let's dive into our main topic. Almost forgot our warm-up. Let's dive into our main topic. What am I doing? We have to warm up. Okay, let's warm up our rhythm brains. We're going to do some actions that you see here. So the heart is tap your heart. The foot is stamp your foot. The head is touch your head. And the blue one is clap. And we're going to do this with the backing track right away. So get ready. There's going to be 2 bars in because it's in 3/4, and then you'll start. Okay, hope you didn't get too tangled with that one. I think I did okay today. All right, and we're also going to do a solfa warm-up. So singing this one in solfa, as you see it starts on sol. So if you prefer not to use solfa, that is totally fine. Okay, just sing it in your own way, but make sure to sing along. Beautiful. I hope you enjoyed singing that. I'm just going to copy that survey link to the chat for those who are asking about that. Now let's dive into our main topic. Right, so curriculum checklists or curriculum checkpoints. This is something I've come up with after years of doing this in multiple different ways. I wanted to come up with some version of this that would be really useful to teachers, and I think I've created the first version of this maybe in 2017. Like, seriously, I've gone over and over this and come up with so many different iterations, and this is the version I'm happy with. So the idea is to have something simple that we can use to check how our student is progressing against a kind of standard framework without making it too rigid that it doesn't make sense for all the different variations with all the different students that we have. So these sheets that I've created, and Vibrant Music Teaching members can access them, my version, inside the membership, and you can also get your own fillable version. But if you want to go the DIY route, you can create it based on what I'm saying here in this video. So each sheet is like a checklist, and there are 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So they're just called Curriculum Checkpoint 1, Curriculum Checkpoint 2, etc. And each sheet provides a quick reference for some of the core goals or milestones you might have for a student. And it's based on a regular student after 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. Now, when I'm saying a regular student, let's say it's a student that's around 8 or 9 when they begin, 7, 8, 9, something like that when they begin. They practice consistently, but not enormously. But that will give you some idea of your students who are intermittent practicers. They're going to be way behind this in terms of like they'll get to checkpoint 1 after 2 years. And that is fine. They don't have to be rigidly 1 year. It's about balancing all the different elements that we have to teach our students. So a student who does practice consistently 5 days a week, but not enormously for each level they're at. Like, they're not doing an hour a day at the beginning. They're doing maybe 15 minutes at the beginning, and then it increases to 20, etc. And they are neither super amazingly magically talented, nor are they having real trouble with any of the specific concepts. So I'm not saying any student has to fit that mold. That's just a rough middle point benchmark that we give so that this checkpoint list makes sense and you can make sense of it based on where your student is and like their tendencies and how they're practicing and all that kind of stuff. So then it has all these categories, and under each category there are different goals or milestones that we either say yes or not yet to. And when you fill it out in that way, you get to see, okay, this student is doing just fine with rhythm, but the oral skills are really lacking here. So that doesn't mean I stop doing everything else and hold them back from moving on to anything that's in checkpoint 2 because they haven't achieved checkpoint 1 with the oral skills. It just means that I bear that in mind and I plan more oral work into my lessons going forward. Now, it also means that if you fill this out for all of your students, as I have just done myself for all my students, you can see overall trends in your studio. So you can start to see, I'm not really sure whether my students know, let's say, the difference between major and minor chords. And I wanted to be sure they knew that at this stage, which I think that's in checkpoint 3. So where can I work that into my curriculum, like into what I'm teaching right now with these students? And how can I make sure that doesn't happen again, that I just don't know where they're at with that skill, right? So it's not about covering everything. It's about having these core items that to you are important benchmarks for your students on their musical journey. Does that make sense? It also helps to keep everything in balance for that individual student and in your studio at large. So let's go through some of the topics that I've put on my checkpoints and that I've suggested for the blank ones that VMT members again can access. So the first category is rhythm. And in the rhythm section, there are the most spaces for checkpoints. So in mine, there are 3 rhythm checkpoints in each of my checkpoint lists. And that's because rhythm is the most important to me. If you look at mine through the membership and say, no, I don't want 3 for rhythm. I want it to be there to be more for some other category. Great, make your own. But the point is to give you a starting place with each of these things. So for me, there are 3 for rhythm and there aren't 3 for any other area. And that's because rhythm is so important and it encompasses so much. So things in the rhythm area are things like keeping a steady beat, being able to distinguish meters, as well as like understanding different note values and being able to play certain rhythm patterns or etc. Do you get the idea? So I mapped these out across all 5 to see what is a realistic but good progression of these skills across the first 5 years, again, for a student who practices and is not a young beginner. So I'm mapping that out based on my experience as a teacher. And if you're a newer teacher, some of this you're going to get way off, but I still think you should do it because you'll learn from what you got wrong as your students progress, and you're not rigidly going to stick to them. You can keep revising them. Okay? So that's rhythm. Then we have terms. So I have a list of terms at each sort of stage, and at the first checkpoint is pretty minimal because these are terms I'm expecting a student not to just be roughly familiar with, but to really know. So, it can be quite basic or you can really limit it. And I haven't gone for all the terms they would probably know at that stage. I've just chosen a few that I think if they know these, they probably know enough terms in general. Yeah? So like, rallentando is on one list where ritardando is not. But I'm assuming that if they know one, if they know rallentando, they probably know ritardando. That's just a rough example. The next item is reading, and under reading I've purposefully not had any goals in terms of standard repertoire. My reading ones are really about sight reading, so they're about things like note recognition, interval recognition, and sight reading music that includes certain elements. Because I think if we get into repertoire, we're just going to make it too narrow that it's not going to work for the broad base of students that we teach, and it definitely wasn't going to work for this thing that's supposed to kind of make sense to all the teachers in vibrant music teaching. Isabella, these topics, this whole checkpoint list is available inside the Vibrant Music Teaching membership. So that is at vibrantmusicteaching.com. If you're not a member yet, you can sign up there. If you are already a member, it's in the course library. So if you look under courses, you'll see Curriculum Checkpoints. It's our newest course. And there's downloads there, so it's all written out for you there. After reading then, which is really about sight reading, I have aural. So in the first year, we're just looking at things like high and low sounds, short and long, the basics like that. And then we're starting to, for me, it's starting to get into things a lot based on solfa, because I like to use a lot of solfa, as you've just seen in the warm-up, for my reading, for my aural skills with my student, for their aural development. I think for ear training, that's the best tool there is. And so while some of it is not solfa based, a lot of it is for me, but it doesn't have to be for you. It has to make sense to you as a teacher and what you really teach your students, what you're going to know if they know, right? Without questioning it. When I filled these out for my own students, I didn't have to look much up. So that's really what I'm aiming for with these kinds of goals, the kinds of things that you are so core to how you teach and what you value that you're going to be pretty sure of where a student is up to with them without checking it. I did have to check a few to make sure whether they had completed a certain level of the 60-second challenge, because I couldn't remember if they were on silver or gold. That's just an example, but most things I knew in my head already. And if I didn't, it told me something about my lesson planning and what I needed to put in those students' lessons. The next area then is technique. And I'll clarify, as I always do, when I say technique, I do not mean scales. No. I mean physically how we play the piano. So in the first year, we're looking at basic posture and stuff like that. And as we go on, we're looking at articulation, things like that. Pedaling even in the last checkpoint list. And then the next area is practice. I had a comment from a member the other day saying thank you for putting practice on there, because it should be like building up a practice habit and practicing effectively are really important skills that we need to develop. They're not just a also thing. They're part of the core to me. So there's a practice element on every checkpoint list. And then the final one says fingers on the early ones. And for me, I change it to technical on the later ones. So fingers in the first year is just like being comfortable knowing which finger number to use and really, really knowing them and being able to perform them physically. So if you're asked to play something with finger 3, you don't get mixed up. And then as it goes forward, the second one, I think I put consistently using the fingering in their pieces, because I think that's really important to have in the early years, because otherwise it bites you later, right? Has anyone had a transfer student or your own student who just does whatever finger they feel like? I feel like if we catch that early, it generally gets followed later. And then after that, it turns into technical, so it's about scales and things like that, because I call those technical exercises. So that's where those fit in mine. Now that's just to give you an idea of mine. What the course does is walks you through how I have come up with each specific checkpoint item for all 5. And I go through each topic like I've just done there, but going from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you can see how they progress and what makes sense to me as those goals. And then you can start to use mine initially if you like, the one I've provided to you with everything filled in. And then if that starts to not make sense to you, if there's some element that you're like, actually I wouldn't write that there, that's where you download the blank one that you can fill in. You can fill it in by hand, by the way. Of course, you can print it out and fill it in, or you can fill it in on the computer, and I show you how to do that in the course. And then so you could start by filling in mostly what I have, but changing the ones that you know are wrong for you. And then it will evolve over time as it makes sense to you. Okay? So that's how the checkpoint list works, and that's how you can build your own. If you want to build entirely your own from scratch, wonderful. Take the idea and run with it. I'm just giving you a starting point because I know how hard it's been to properly gauge these so that they really make sense. I tend to go too ambitious at first and then I have to scale it back, or in some cases I have to push the other direction, and I've done that for the past several years until I feel really good about them, and them being realistic again for that student who might be fictional in your studio, might never exist, who consistently practices for their first 5 years. If they did that, what would they be able to do? That's the question. I'm not saying they never miss a week, I'm just giving that as a rough gauge. Nancy, so glad you enjoy it. Yes, that's a good point. I do provide activities on the site. So for every goal, there's also activity suggestions. So if that's an area where your student is falling short or you need to cover it more as a teacher, you've got links right there to VMT resources so that you can, check it out and really work on honing each of these skills. They're not like the only resources we have for each thing. I've just picked ones that I think are particularly helpful for each of those areas. So that's how the curriculum checkpoints work. I hope you'll check it out. If you're not a member, again, you can sign up at vibrantmusicteaching.com, and that's how you get access. Everything is included right there in the membership. Okay, we're going to dive into our Q&A. So if you have questions, please do add them into the chat. So I went for butterflies because of our unseasonal spring weather at the moment, and also because I think they kind of fit with my mountainous shirt. Why not? That's what I'm going with. I'm just going to double check I haven't missed any questions here. I don't think I have. No, I haven't. So that's awesome. I just saw the checklist in VMT. I think it will be great to be able to show this to the students so they will be on board with learning certain skills. Oh, that's an interesting approach, Michelle, to actually show it to them. I think of it as guiding my own teaching, but everything in VMT is for you to adapt in your own way. I'm just there to provide the tools. Yes, Yukiko, I hope you do. I hope you use it. They are, aren't they? And they flutter their wings. They're a bit cuter than I normally go on these filters, by the way. I normally go for something silly. Robin, yay! I'm going to give you some confetti for that. That is awesome. I should have cheering to go with that confetti. But that's fantastic. Please, all of you, please go do the survey. It's really important. Yeah, I wish I could. I've heard there's snow. I feel like it's across a lot of the US and Canada now, is it? I feel like I keep seeing posts from various different places with snow coming down. So, yeah. Sure, you would just want to adapt it. So you definitely want to fill in the blank version or like create your own based on mine. But there's no reason why the system and the idea wouldn't work. And a lot of the elements are still going to be relevant, but just things where I'm talking about like, well, definitely the finger numbers, you're going to need to change it to activities that teach the right finger numbers for you, just as an example, if it's not piano. Or if you're teaching voice, obviously finger numbers are not relevant. So things like that, but I think a lot of it will be a great starting off point for you. You're welcome. So glad it's helpful, Anne-Marie. Yeah, I think I've caught all the... Oh, I'm glad you enjoyed it. Yeah, Carmen's so fun to chat to. She was on the podcast talking about it. Fabulous. Okay, it doesn't look like we have questions today, so I might wrap it up there. If you are in time, make sure to check out the Accelerate page. So that's at vibrantmusicteaching.com/accelerate. Again, that's our coaching program. So it's about small group Zoom sessions with me where we dive into your goals, set tangible targets, and come back and help you achieve them over the next 4 months. I'm really excited to make some real progress, see some fantastic progress that studio owners are making through that, and really work with you almost one-on-one to help you achieve those things. So again, that's at vibrantmusicteaching.com/accelerate. And it's a full 4-month program because this time of year is the time to make changes. Because it's before we head to the summer. For those of us in this hemisphere anywhere, we're going to be on summer break after May. And that's when you can easily make, say, policy changes or even teaching changes because you have this natural fresh start effect. So I hope you'll check it out and consider joining me for that because I would love to see you there. And in the meantime, I will see you next week for our preview, our tour of the first ever concept collection. I will see you then. Bye, everyone.